Monte Carlo late one night. I received an urgent phone call from my brother, who told me in a panic that Mom had collapsed. I rushed to the hospital and found my mother lying there, and I tried desperately to speak to her. Just as I thought her vitals picked back up, and I thought she was going to be okay, her heart rate flatlined, and she passed away. When I told my husband about this, I got the most unexpected response.
Shit, that's so freaking annoying for me. As now, I'm sure all that panicking and scuttling around in the middle of the night wouldn't have made a difference. If you had come or not, this result would have been the freaking same. Then now that she's dead, you're expecting me to pay a gift of condolences. I presume.
Not only did my husband speak to me in a cold manner, but this is the story of how my toxic husband did something that was far over the line, destroying my trust in him and my love for him, and how karma granted him what he deserved. My name is Ida, and I'm a 35-year-old office worker. How my husband, Neil, works for the same company, and of course that's how we initially met. Our relationship started when Neil became my trainer, assigned to teach me the ways of the company and how to do my job properly, as well as some personal things like anxiety and fear of making mistakes. The company we worked for is a major cosmetics manufacturer, and Neil was in the department of development of the cosmetics the company was selling. A good part of his job was to design new ideas for better cosmetics than our competitors, better packaging, and better deals to gather more and more attention. When I first joined the company, I was also assigned to the Department of Development, but I was soon transferred to the sales department because a boss of mine realized how proficient I was taking action and communicating with people. Right around the time of our marriage, Neil was promoted to section manager. Both my personal and professional lives are going well. He was delighted, to say the least. The promotion rules of our workplace included the very fair fact that you can be promoted regardless of your age, with the condition that you are good at what you do. That way, everyone has a chance at success. Neil was trying his best, but it didn't seem to be going well for him at all. I was initially skeptical of my prowess when I was first reassigned to the Department of Sales, however. It did not take very long for me to realize what my old boss had seen in me. I found that I had a natural talent for sales and was able to develop 2 new contracts for the company within my first 2 months. I was promoted up the ladder in recognition of my achievements. I started out as an assistant manager, but then I became a section manager. That was when my husband's attitude toward me changed. Not just to me, actually. His behavior towards his colleagues in the company changed for the worse as well. Before he changed, he never ever complained about the company.
I freaking love my job.
That was all I ever heard from him regarding his work, and he was serious. But when I got promoted, he started to complain.
Just the other day, a young woman transferred to my department, and she's so damn useless. I honestly don't know what to do. Honestly, efficient. I really wish they'd freaking do something about preparing the young and inexperienced over there before they send them over here for real.
Isn't this new girl from the sales department?
Correct. That beasters would buy reported berry. Sherlock, at the keys, plus people from sales are basically useless degenerates.
I'm in the sales department, lest we forget. I'm pretty sure you're talking about me too, eh?
I thought about. That's a word. No, it's an Agnes Trapper. I did not. I'll pipe down. Did she bite black brushing? Look.
But then again, Neil just continued on mumbling under his breath.
A chief manager of sales is not a good judge of character either. For real. Someone who can't even do much housework at home gets a promotion at the company. It's so freaking stupid and I resent it. As you're a woman, you should start being useful by doing the work you're obliged to do at home. Shoes. Just today, you freaking came home later than me. The woman should get home early to make sure the house is nice and tidy for the men to rest and relax after a long day's work. Or craters.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, anyone can apologize.
Such were the things he was saying, and needless to say, most of them sounded downright inappropriate, rude, and occasionally misogynistic and inhumane. I don't know if he just wasn't aware of the fact I could hear his every word, or if he was just daring me to listen to what he had to say. But this went on every day for a time longer than I care to admit. Once I apologized to him, though, these moods of his subsided. My salary was obviously higher than is because of my recent promotion, and I have a higher position in the company than he does, which meant that in the event he and I worked together on a project, he would have to listen to me. I didn't care about any of that, but I knew it would bother Neil, so I didn't say anything about it. But here's the thing, if his behavior was only towards me, I can live with it. But the way he treated employees younger than him at work was downright unacceptable. As someone who is in a better position than him, and as a human being before all else, his behavior in the workplace was worthy of reprimanding, if not banishing. For instance, oftentimes as soon as he came home,
I was the worst thing that ever happened to regarding insert family name. It would be so much more efficient and better for all of us if he would just quit his job.
in this manner he put his colleagues, all younger than him, under the spotlight of his shame, and talked negatively about each and every person he disapproved of behind their backs. More recently, he went so far as to say things like,
I gave her that ridiculous job because I don't like her. And so she got into a bunch of panic, and it was a little hilarious.
he was actually laughing at his abusive deeds with heartfelt content. I could only assume he was talking about my junior employee, who recently joined the Department of Development. The girl he was talking about is a good worker, and at the time, I was sure she'd move up the ladder in no time. I think he probably sensed that, and in addition to that, I thought he knew she used to work for me in my department. I'm 4 years younger than my husband, so I'm sure he was most upset toward the fact that I'm younger than him, got promoted beyond his position, and was getting paid more. All of this meant that he was telling me, I can't forgive you for thinking highly of your juniors, while they're actually useless in everything that they do, in a pretty roundabout way. We were husband and wife, and the natural way of things was that he would be happy for me. I decided to let Neil's complaining slide, telling myself that he didn't have the heart to deal with it. Such had become my married life with Neil, and slowly but surely, I was sick and tired of his existence. That one day, I was sitting alone on a bench at work, eating lunch, when I received a call from my mother.
Hi there, sweetheart. How are you?
Hey Mom, it's been a while. I'm doing well. I talked with Mom for a while that day. She said she didn't have any important reason to call me, but she did tell me that she wanted to hear my voice for the first time in a while. What about you? Mom, are you feeling okay? How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, sweetheart. The other day I was sorting through the photos in the house, and I stumbled upon a photo of you when you were little. It brought back memories, and I started to wonder how you were doing. The photo was of you crying, and I was hoping you weren't going through any sad times lately. You are a crier after all.
I cannot tell how warm my heart felt in my chest when I heard her tell me all that. I became pretty sure it wasn't just the photo that provoked her into calling me. Mom had an uncanny knack for sensing things amiss with me, and she always, without ever failing, to contact me at the right time, right when I was feeling sad or painful in some way. Is this what a mother's love was all about? I felt so grateful to have such an angel as my mom. I was so happy to hear Mom's cheerful voice for the first time in a while. I told her I was thinking of going back home for the next holiday weekend and having lunch with her somewhere. After making plans, we said our enthusiastic goodbyes and hung up the phone. I could never have imagined this was the last phone call I would ever have with her. Late that very night, while Neil and I were sleeping, I received a call from my brother. The ungodly hour, coupled with the fact that Gabriel never called me, made me think that something was wrong. His panicked tone confirmed my worst fear. Idea. Mom is in trouble. To sum up the phone call from my brother, Mom was complaining about having some pain in the chest, and she collapsed not 60 seconds before Gabriel called me. Dad had called an ambulance, and as he was wrapping up what was going on, I heard unfamiliar voices in the background. One thing that stood out like a wolf amidst a pack of chihuahuas were the words, "She's unstable and in critical condition." I could only assume she was going to be rushed to the hospital. I screamed into the phone for the address of the hospital, and Gabriel told me quickly. I hurriedly changed out of my pajamas and was on my way to the front door. When my husband woke up, perhaps because I was flailing around in pandemonium. What the hell are you up to? Mom collapsed, and they said she's in critical condition, so I'm going to the hospital. I hoped my ears were playing a trick on me when I thought I heard a snicker coming from him. And then he said, "It's too late to go now, isn't it?" And then he laughed, I can comics the portions. Until now, I could ignore anything he said to me because I could take his bullshit. None of his bulletlets would ever hurt me. But he pointed the gun toward my family. That was something completely different, and something I definitely couldn't ignore. In a tone so calm, I made myself intimidated. I said, "What did you just say?" "Son, I'm asking you what you just said about my precious mother. I've always been able to ignore the nasty things you've been saying about me and about my colleagues, but what I think you just said about my mother, I will never forgive you for that." The look in Neil's eyes went from cocky to intimidated in less than a millisecond. Probably because I hadn't been angry at him in a long time. I didn't have time to talk about this, so I told him I was going to the hospital and opened the door. I descended the path towards my car and was about to open the door when he stopped me.
Undone, Ephraim!
"Don't bother. You have to work tomorrow, and you must be so tired from your work today." "Thanks, Neil. I know today was especially hard."
I was like fusing. And you're tired from work, too. It's dark at night, and if you drive with this unstable mentality, you'll be in an accident.
"Thank you. I'll take your word for it then." That. I got into his car. I thought he was thinking about my safety and well-being, and for a brief instant, I felt comfortable to be together with him. The reality was that he wasn't concerned for my safety at all. Why? Because he was in a rotten mood the whole time. He drove very erratically, more silent than a cat in a dark alleyway, and with a look of murderous intent on his face. We got on the highway and he was driving so fast and changing lanes, so often that I actually got carsick. But such dangerous driving, notwithstanding, we made it to the hospital without any incident. I must admit that even now, if I had driven, I think I would have arrived at the hospital more than 30 minutes later. Thank goodness for Neil and his apparent selflessness on that occasion, despite his dangerous driving. When we arrived at the hospital, we rushed for the emergency room. The clerk on duty showed us to the hospital room, and when we entered the room, did Gabriel and his pregnant wife, Ruby, had already arrived. Dad was holding Mom's hand and talking to her the whole time. Mom herself looked so beautiful in the moonlight. I hadn't seen her in what seemed like forever, and goodness me, was she a sight for sore eyes? Her eyes were closed, her breathing calm and steady, and her mouth contorted into a semi-smile. I almost burst into tears at the sight I beheld. Mom was still alive. When Dad realized that I had come to the hospital room, he smiled. "Mom, it's me. Day. I'm here now." "Lakshmak," my father urged me to take hold of her hand. I clenched it passionately, tightly. I kissed it twice. I placed her palm on my right cheek. It was so warm, but so weak. As I continued to speak to her, the numbers on the machine that were right on the edge of my vision moved. The waveform of the heartbeat, which consisted of concerningly erratic waves, became gentle and smooth. At that moment, I knew she was going to be okay. I couldn't help but to shout at the top of my lungs, "Mom? Mom! Nan!" I bawled in joy. She was going to be okay. Gabriel came up behind me and put his large hands on my shoulders. I don't know what it was exactly about his hands that made me calm down so much so quickly, but wow, that did the trick. In a gentle voice, nothing like the panicked voice he had earlier, he said, "Mom wanted to see you, you know. She was just doing her best waiting for you. Didn't you? Like to dearest? Mom, you fought back with all your might just to see us all, right? You called Ida the other day, didn't you? You said she sounded sad, so you were determined to make her favorite stew the next time she came over, right? I couldn't stop crying. I have eaten your delicious cooking yet. I really want to eat your world-famous beef stew again. I swear, if that beef stew isn't worthy of being served before the gods of Olympus, then they deserve to fall off as rulers of the world. Will you make me your beef stew when you get better? Latimus?" Just when I thought her semi-smile was turning into a full-edged smile, the heart monitor suddenly began to scream. The doctor on duty rushed into the room, calling for backup and for a priest. We were led out of the room by a nurse, and we were told to stay in the waiting room until the doctor was ready to tell us how it went. Those moments of waiting were literal agony. My emotions were in such chaos, and my body didn't know if I should scream, cry, punch a hole in the wall, or everything at once. I just buried my face into my dad's shoulder, and I could feel his trembling fingers caressing my hair. The priest arrived soon thereafter, and although none of us were religious, we let him pray for Mom's safety. 10 minutes passed since the praying started, but those 600 seconds seemed like an eternity. Dr. Jordan, on duty with a melancholic atmosphere, informed us that Mom had passed away. The world around me went black. I didn't faint, but I might as well have been unconscious. Mom had just shown me she was going to be okay. How could she die? How could she? I must have appeared catatonic because Gabriel had to lightly slap my cheek to bring me back to reality. I saw his face, his eyes staring deep into mine. I couldn't cry, but I just leaped into his chest, burying my face into his shirt. I could hear Dad meeting with the priest and with the funeral director, which had been contacted presumably by Dr. Jordan. The bee then pointed out, "Isn't that your husband?" I did anyway. "What's he doing, standing against the wall like that?" I looked to where she pointed and saw Neil leaning against the wall, his back turned toward us, his arms crossed, looking down. He drove me to the hospital even though he was tired. "I'm going to go check on him, see if he's all right." Gabriel released me, and I approached my husband. "I'm sorry." "Not me. I know you're tired, but my family would appreciate a little greeting from you. Could you at least say hello to Dad? Gabriel and Ruby?" I called to him in the most affectionate voice I could muster. I was met with silence. Mom passed away. Up in the election. I have to go home for a while, because I have to help take care of things with my family, so you go on home ahead and get your rest." "Okay. I'm so sorry to drag you out of here." When I apologized to him sincerely, he finally did something in response. He turned around, revealing a face that reeked of annoyed irritation.
Wow, it's a freaking useless episode. Music is so dangerous therapy. What the hell did I tell you? If you not see that come, it wouldn't have made a goddamn difference.
What are you talking about? Neil, how can you say such things when Mom worked so hard to see me one last time before she... I was so frustrated with how the situation was spiraling down towards hell, and I swore I would never shed a goddamn tear. But then Neil went on to continue hurling the most brutal, most painful words anyone could have ever said at me.
I realize so freaking annoying. I do. Heartlessness become better. I had to drive because of your rude, annoying old hag who stole my precious time. You really ought to be freaking thanking me big time, bitch.
I had decided I wasn't going to cry, but how could anyone withstand such soul-wrenching words? You aren't. You know I wanted to come alone. I told you I was going, and I told you that you should stay and rest, and yet you said you would drive.
Because I'm in a better position at home than you are, and you freaking stood up to me. If you think you can drive to the hospital, if you're not cool-headed enough to know your damn place in the house. It'd be even worse if I had to pay for another useless funeral, not to mention the cost of fixing the car. That would leave me broke as hell, for real.
He was actually laughing. What was this sack of lard talking about? Like I said, I could put up with so much of his bullshit when it was just about me or the company, but not my family, not now, not ever. Give me an indefinite amount of time. I would never understand how he could act like such a heartless barbarian when Mom was resting in the room over. The sheer fury I felt at Neil for being such a soulless bastard left me unable to answer, and my silence should have spoken for itself. But then...
I'm leaving. I special for consistory. I will spend time with that annoying old hag's uncaring family. Good riddance, she's dead. Oh, wait a second, you're keeping quiet because you want the condolence money. Also, my nurses are as broader discomplications. And so shoe comes down to money, does it? As considering all the trouble you freaking caused me, this is all you need.
He laughed hysterically as he threw 4 pennies at my face. Metal hitting skin never made me flinch. I was completely humiliated, but continued picking up the money. Then the buffalo said, "All right, since it is condolences, you need a bag for the money too, don't you? But the cost of the bag would be more than the money that freaking Stiff ever deserves." He hollered with laughter. I exploded. I marched right up to his face and did 2 things. I screamed in fury and slapped him as hard as I could.
Why won't you do it? Hank, help me. Respect me. I'll kill you, bitch.
As he was yelling at me, my brother stepped into the conversation. Gabriel was a giant of a man, standing at 6'7", 250 pounds of pure muscle. I'm sure he'd marched this way because he heard Neil's loud voice. His voice was dangerously calm and deep.
Is everything okay over here?
As Rapistetis, yeah. I did a pretty bad. Everything's fine, sir. Anyway, you just call me when you know what you're going to do.
Sure thing. After saying that, Neil fled the scene as if he was running away for his life. My brother noticed that I was acting strange after Neil disappeared out of sight, so he called Ruby over. Naturally, I told them both what had just happened between me and Neil. I was furious out of my mind, of course, but it didn't matter anymore. I had made up my mind to freaking divorce that bastard. I never contacted him again after that, and Mom's wake, funeral, and farewell ceremony all went smoothly without a hitch. I didn't contact Neil for a while, and I kept going back to my parents' home after work, mainly because I was worried about how Dad was faring. He was heartbroken, but he wasn't hopeless. He knew what Mom would want him to do, and out of his love for her, he was going to make it happen. That made me so relieved, but I stayed with him for a while nonetheless. I guess Neil realized I was avoiding him because he stormed into my department during lunch break one day a few weeks later.
You got to be kidding me. I ain't your wife. And hey, it just Nika says us. What the hell do you think you're doing?
Well, look who's freaking talking. If it isn't Mr. Neil Dunn. And what do you think you were doing, eh?
Excuse me. She be crying too much responses out here.
On the night Mom passed away, you said that your precious time was wasted because of an annoying old hag, and you threw me 4 goddamn pennies, claiming that it was your condolence gift. How could anyone, even a smidge sensible, possibly believe I would want to continue a relationship with someone who disrespected the hell out of me and those I love most? Just divorce me already? You complain to me every day because your position in the company is lower than mine, and then you go on and on talking shit about literally everyone in the company. After that, I kept talking loudly about what my husband had done to me and to those around him, loud enough that everyone on the floor could hear me. You've acted sarcastic and even abusive ever since I first got promoted. You said that it was so unfair that all your juniors, even those that are younger than me, were getting ahead in the company despite the fact that they're useless. You never help me with the housework, even when I come home later than you, and you always complain about how the house is so messy whenever you get home. I mean, duh. I have a job, and one that demands my focus and effort if I want to continue providing enough for your broke ass. And last but not least, you treat my mother and my family like a nuisance. You never once said a word of sympathy for Mom, who tragically passed away 3 weeks ago, nor for my family, who've all been grieving for their loss. When I blurted all these things, he stopped me with that loud mouth of his. I didn't do any of that bullshit. Everyone here knows I'm not that kind of person. I understand now. I understand how truly frickin' pathetic you are. Don't want to play games, huh, IDA? And then he started to speak louder. Listen up, everyone. Which, by the way, it is. She's a woman, for crying out loud. She only makes me 1 bowl of soup and 3 measly side dishes every day. She doesn't care what I want to eat unless I request it. And get this. Her mother collapsed in the middle of the night, perhaps due to a heart attack or something. I don't know. I don't care. Did she inherit her mother's inability to take care of what's important? Neil was digging his own grave at this point. The terrible deeds he had done came leaking out of that foghorn mouth of his. In retrospect, I'm sure he never even considered the possibility he was doing anything wrong. If anything, he probably felt like everyone else would do exactly what he had done. How could I have fallen in love with and married such a pile of rot? As Neil continued to expose himself, the employees around him, who were quiet up until that point, started to laugh and point fingers at him. Oh my god! Neil, you're horrible!
Literally the worst human being on the planet. This guy is the boss man at development. Just graceful for real?
This bag of slime doesn't have a human heart. Not surprising, you never got promoted beyond.
Such were their views on the situation. Neil must have realized his plan was backfiring because he became very quiet. He clamped his mouth shut and crouched down in shame. Apologize now. Still too late. I'm demanding a divorce. That's all I said, and I slapped him with the divorce documents. Even the other employees around me started to whisper.
If you don't agree to the divorce, you don't even deserve any happiness whatsoever. You're so scummy. I guess my husband couldn't take the mounting pressure any longer. He signed the divorce papers right away. Thereafter, Neil resigned from the company probably.
Because he couldn't stand the fact that he was the center of gossip for the junior employees, the very same on whom he had been looking down for so long, for every second of every day. The head of the department of sales, my boss, said, he was always quite a troublemaker, condescending to people and talking to them as though he were at a higher position. We've been hearing lots of insecurities about him from folks all around. I bet he just didn't have confidence in himself. Heck, from the looks of it, he had absolutely none. I really thought he was spot on there. In fact, Neil would only greet people who were above him at work, and sometimes he would still say things that were out of the ordinary towards his superior. I guess the bosses didn't trust him, because they knew how he was with people younger than him, even with business partners. I guess that's why he never made it above section chief. Pathetic man. Then sold the apartment I was living in with him, and went back to my parents' home. I was worried about Dad living alone, as I mentioned, so I thought moving back in with him was the best thing to do. And as of now, I still continue to work at the company, which seems to be somewhat more vibrant now that Neil Dunn was gone. I think the company will grow even more now that there are no more people in the company who had such backwards ideas about reality. I will continue to work with this company to spread our wonderful products to the world and provide confidence and happiness to every single one of our clients.